Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the, I guess you could say, test show of PWP TV. Myself and Oliver Norgrove will be doing kind of a mock uh, draft, brand extension where we'll be picking teams. I'll have SmackDown, he'll have Raw. Oliver, say hello to the people.
What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining us. And yeah, I'm kind of apprehensive and excited for how this is going to turn out. Hopefully, it's pretty good. So yeah, thanks for having me, Eron.
No problem. This is, like I said before, this is kind of a test show. We're not really looking to be too professional on here. We're just trying to kind of get a rough feeling of what we'll be doing. Myself, Jay Leto, and a bunch of other people are going to be kind of grabbing PWP TV and the YouTube page and trying to run with it and see what we can do with this page. As far as scheduling goes, Jay Leto, I think, will be doing videos about, I think he has one coming up this week where he'll be talking about some topics he has on his mind. Plans are that we're going to be doing a weekly PWP hangout similar to this, where we'll just be, shooting the breeze, talking stuff, a bunch of different writers, and maybe fans if they want to join us as well. And who knows? Who knows what we're going to be doing with the YouTube page and stuff like that. So
yeah, there's a lot of ideas floating around at the moment. So hopefully a lot of them come to fruition because it's a pretty exciting time to be a part of the network and a part of the site and a part of the channel. So hopefully it just gets rolling and this is successful. So yeah, it's good to be a part of, definitely.
Absolutely. So let's get started. Oliver's going to have Raw. I'm going to have SmackDown. The way it's going to work is we took the entire main roster of WWE. We excluded a couple people. I took out Vince McMahon. I took out Triple H. I took out Stephanie McMahon. Obviously for obvious reasons there. But we kept in The Rock. We kept in Undertaker. We kept in Brock Lesnar. The way me and Oliver understand it is what we'll do is if we pick one of those guys, we'll have to understand that that's our choice. Now we got to kind of take it in a reality sense where if we pick Brock Lesnar, we're gonna have to understand that he probably won't be full time. He won't be this. Taker similar. He'll only be around for WrestleMania. So we've got to kind of understand what we have there. Now the time period or landscape of I guess our WWE here is we'll be doing around 2004. That time period where each brand had their own titles. Of course, around that time period, I think Raw had the World Heavyweight and SmackDown had the WWE. They both had their separate tag titles and stuff like that. So we'll kind of be working through that kind of time period as far as titles go and what we'll be doing there.
Yeah.
Oliver has given me the first pick, so I'm going to go with John Cena as my first pick.
I will be going with Daniel Bryan, a bit of a pole opposite there, but I just think it just makes it logical. It's logical if you pick Cena, then I will be going for Bryan.
You're not worried about Bryan's neck injuries?
No, not long term. Short term, sure, I understand that, but at this point, I think Bryan is a good pick long term. So
well, I picked Cena for obvious reasons. I mean, the merchandise is just a lock there. He's going to be able to sell shirts and whatever. And of course, he's kind of going toward the back end of his career where he's kind of getting a little more injury prone. That does worry me a little bit, but I think he's the type of guy that's a confident professional. He'll be able to kind of work through that. Now with Daniel Bryan, I'm not so sure after he comes back, what form will he be in?
Yeah, because obviously Cena can carry a brand. He's proven that before, so that won't be an issue. Obviously, with Cena, you mentioned about him being injury prone and him having issues with his shoulder and his neck and whatever. So I think the choices we've made are complete opposites, but I think they're both good. So.
All right, I'm on the clock here, and I'm going to go with a recent fan favorite, somebody that is probably one of the hottest superstars in WWE right now, but is taking a little time off. I'm going to go with Dean Ambrose. I think Ambrose is obviously somebody for the future. I think he's probably one of the hottest superstars going right now. I was a little confused by them taking him off TV right now to film some kind of movie. Joel O'Brien has a tremendous piece on Dean Ambrose possibly being the next champion. So I think Dean Ambrose could be a nice building block for me on SmackDown.
Yeah, I agree. I read the article that Joe put up, and it is really good. So if you haven't seen it, go check it out. So yeah, I honestly, if I had that pick, I would have gone for Dean Ambrose as my second pick. But you were first, so I can't have him now. That's fair enough. So I completely get why you've used Dean Ambrose. As you said, he's I mean, essentially he's the hottest thing going right now. I mean, who doesn't like what Dean Ambrose is doing? I know he's filming, but when he comes back, he'll be bigger and better than ever. So I'm kind of annoyed that you took him, but we soldier on. Okay, so I'm going to be going with Brock Lesnar as my second pick, part time. I think he'll mesh schedule wise and just what he brings. I think he'll mesh well with Bryan as another main eventer that I have in my ranks. So that's why I'm going with Brock Lesnar as my second pick. And also he's in real life he's being used partly as filler for Bryan as well. Obviously he's a huge draw, so bringing him back makes sense. So at this point, I think Lesnar and Bryan will work well together long term and short term. So that's why I've gone with Lesnar.
That's definitely respectable. I mean, I understand. Like you said, he's not going to be exactly there every week, but he's a proven draw. So I'm going to stick with my youth movement, and I'm going to go with Roman Reigns. I think, and of course, you wrote your piece on PWP earlier this week.
Yeah.
You think that he's not somebody that can take John Cena's spot going down the line in the future. I disagree. I think he's the if WWE was going to create their ultimate star and kind of build him from scratch, I think Roman Reigns is what they would build in that machine. I mean, he's got the looks, he's got the heritage with The Rock and of course the Samoan bloodline, and I think Reigns, of course, isn't like you said in your article, isn't great on the mic yet, but I think he has a different style. I think he has more of an aloof, kind of too cool for school kind of attitude, and I think that's what they're going to try and play on. You got to remember, this guy's only been wrestling for about 4 years. He joined FCW NXT in 2010. He's only been wrestling for about 4 years on the main roster for 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's definitely a newer aspect to WWE. I mean, you mentioned my article. I put it up a couple of days ago, and I think WWE will try their best to push him, and they will try to put him in that spot. My article is saying that once he's there, I don't think he's going to do a very good job. However, you mentioned him being green. You talk about his promo ability. His promos are not good at the moment. They will improve, obviously. I see what you're saying about his attitude. He's kind of aloof when he speaks on the mic. He's kind of casual, kind of calm. So he has his own style. But that was said about Randy Orton as well years ago, and his promos never improved. So which is why Roman Reigns is a good pick. I can see why you picked him completely because the fans like him at the moment, and obviously he's a draw too. So that's a sensible third pick. Myself, I'm going to be going with somebody very similar yet almost very different in Seth Rollins. I think he's the next logical. I think I haven't gone with youth as much as you, but Seth Rollins to me is the next piece to my puzzle because he's one of those guys capable of putting on 5-star matches with a whole range of opponents. I mean, just imagine a Rollins Bryan 60-man Iron Man match. I mean, we may not ever get that, but if you imagine that, so when you have Rollins and Lesnar or Bryan in your roster, you've always got the potential for great feuds and great matches. So I think Seth Rollins for me is my third pick, and I'm behind that completely. I think Seth Rollins would do great with those two. Absolutely,
I can't disagree with you there. With my next pick, I'm going to this one's tough here. I'm debating between two right now, but I'm going to go with the guy you just kind of gave a backhanded compliment to, Randy Orton. I think we know how you feel about Randy Orton. I think Randy Orton is one of the, I won't say underrated because he's
not underrated.
He's he's perfectly rated where he is. I think he gets a little bit of crap from fans just because, and he has kind of the John Cena syndrome. He kind of has been the same thing for a little bit, for a long time. But you got to remember, this is a guy, and that's why I say, we have to be careful with some of the younger guys we bring up, because this is a guy that just got too much too soon. As soon as he broke off from Evolution, he went right into the world title picture, won the world title, and was kind of in the main event his entire career, where now, he's around 30, I think he's about 35, 36, around that area, and he's been around for almost, I think, about, 10, 12 years, and, he's already got 12 titles under his belt. I mean, the guy's been around for a long time, but you cannot deny his in-ring performance by any stretch of the imagination. His SummerSlam stuff was incredible.
Yeah, I never have doubted his ability. I mean, he's one of the best wrestlers in WWE history in terms of how smooth he is. He's definitely up there. Randy Orton, to me, hasn't been good since 2009. From 2004 to 2009, he was one of the best. He was brilliant. I loved his Legend Killer stuff. When he turned heel, it was great. Since 2009, 2010, he's done exactly the same thing week in, week out almost, and it's just, to me, it's boring to watch. And which is why I'm going to go with somebody completely opposite to Randy Orton as my fourth pick. Somebody who hasn't been around long, somebody with a completely different gimmick, somebody with a completely different style, and that's Bray Wyatt. Looks a little bit like you, by the way, if you see that resemblance at all. I think you make a good Bray Wyatt. But yeah, Bray Wyatt to me has been disappointing. WWE have been disappointing in terms of how they've booked him in the last few months, definitely since the feud with Cena. I almost feel sorry for the guy because he's done so well in his first year. His promo ability, even some of his matches have been almost 5-star. Cena and Bryan, so he's done well. He's been thrown into the mix with top names and he's done pretty well and he's entertained. So I think Bray Wyatt as all round is a good pick for number 4.
Absolutely, I'm his biggest fan. I think he has the potential to be our generations of the Undertaker. I think he just resembles that character so well. Now WWE hasn't booked him the right way since he's made his debut. I made the point before SummerSlam. He's only won the last singles match he won cleanly was at Royal Rumble against Daniel Bryan, which shows the lack of good booking that they've done with him. But I'm confident that they're going to re-push him and push him to the moon once we get out of the woods with the Lesnar era. And I think guys like Cesaro, which of course will be picked later on, guys like that will eventually be able to move on and move up the card. My next pick is gonna hurt one of your top guys. I'm doing this kind of out of spite because I know without this man, one of your top stars will not be able to talk on the microphone, and that is Mr. Paul Heyman.
Oh.
Paul Heyman, of course, probably the greatest, one of the greatest managers of all time. Probably, arguably the best mic worker right now, currently going in wrestling. And I'm going with Paul Heyman.
I think Randy Orton is.
That's your guy.
Yeah, that's a good move. I think that's a very tactical move. Part of the reason why I took Seth Rollins is because you had Reigns and Ambrose, so it would have made if I'd have passed up Rollins, it would have been a bit stupid because you've got a whole storyline angle ready there.
Yeah.
So I took Rollins. My fifth pick is actually somebody close to home. He's one of my favourites, and obviously as a fellow native, I'm a big fan of his, and that's going to be Bad News Barrett. Bad News Barrett's one of my favourites, and I've really enjoyed. Unfortunately, he's injured, but he's returning soon. I think he returns at the end of this month. So Barrett to me is a good pick at number 5 because he's one of those guys that transitions well between mid card and main event. So you can have him facing your top guys, and you can have him facing your mid carders. So, and obviously his mic work has improved tremendously over the past 6 months. So Barrett, is a set for my number 5 pick. Very different to Heyman, obviously, because he's a wrestler. But Barrett is my number 5.
I understand that completely. The only problem I have with him though is, he's been repackaged so many times. He's been repushed so many times. He's injured again. Is there a point where WWE just says that's it. We can't do anything with him anymore because every time we do, he gets hurt.
Yeah, I see what you mean. He's a little bit like he reminds me a little bit of a Cody Rhodes, but more injuries, because he's one of these guys who changes what he does, and he may not be given the best thing, but he tries to make the best out of it. You're completely right about the injuries. That's the only downfall to him being here. But honestly, I think after this injury, I think Barrett has got one more long-term chance at WWE success, and that is a chance I would give him personally. So I don't regret picking Barrett because I think he's good all round. I don't think there's anything he's really bad at. And obviously he meshes well with a lot of other. He has a lot of chemistry and history with other members of the roster. So bad news, Barrett. I think we'll do very well here.
All right, let me pick my next guy here. I think this is somebody that obviously is a humongous fan favorite. And similar to Bad News Barrett, a guy that's gotten kind of injured and he hasn't really been able to get pushed again. But we're starting to see it now again. I'm going to go with Dolph Ziggler. I think Ziggler is somebody that really kind of personifies what I'm trying to build on SmackDown, which is young guys that can perform from bell to bell and just put on great matches. On my brand, Ziggler would be pushed to the extreme. The only concern I have with him is if I do push him, he might get injured. Yeah,
Dolph Ziggler's a good pick because he's one of those guys. Whatever he's doing, he has fan support behind him, and if you have somebody on your roster that's over, then you've got something to work with. So with Ziggler, the only concern there is that people forget this about him. Dolph Ziggler doesn't have a character, and that can hurt him. He has everything but a character, and if you don't have an identity or a direction, fans can't kind of relate to you in any way, then it can be damaging. And also the fact that, first of all, I think his name is horrible, and also I think he's a great wrestler. Don't get me wrong, but Dolph Ziggler, his moniker is the show off, and that to me is a heel trait. You just associate that with the heel thing, and he's a babyface. So it's almost like he's not complete. Dolph Ziggler to me, he's got the talent, but he's just not complete as a character yet. So that's why.
He reminds me a lot of Shawn Michaels in his early days with, like you said, the show-off kind of gimmick. It kind of resembles the Heartbreak Kid gimmick, and I think they really had something going with him from the start. But they, like I said, he got hurt, he got a concussion. They had to take the title off of him, and he did run his mouth on Twitter and stuff about Randy Orton and all that stuff. So I think he can make a resurgence. I think he's starting to make a resurgence, but I think they understand he could get injured, and if he does again, they can't push him again. So, that's with him. But I'm gonna treat him with care. I'll give him a helmet, and he can run around the ring like he does.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm gonna go with a wrestler now who is actually similar to my first pick. My first pick being Daniel Bryan, of course, and my sixth pick is actually Cesaro. Obviously, he's I would say probably the best worker on the roster right now, and there are a lot of fans who are behind Cesaro. There are a lot of members of the Cesaro section, and I think he'd be a good pick to have because he's one of those people that can transition well, and whatever he's doing, there'll be a lot of fans behind him, and a lot of fans want to see him do well. The downside to Cesaro is he can't cut a very good promo. Unfortunately, that happens though. I mean, how many top stars can you think of who haven't been able to cut a good promo and have done very well? I mean, you think of Bret Hart, Rob Van Dam, Chris Benoit, Randy Orton. These guys, they can't talk, but they did very well. So Cesaro comes in. Cesaro under me would eventually appear in that category, which is why I've picked him because I think he would do really well, especially coming up against Brock Lesnar. I mean, I think we all want to see Brock Lesnar versus Cesaro on some weird level, and Cesaro versus Rollins and Cesaro versus Bryan. So there's a lot of intrigue there.
Absolutely, I think Cesaro is in that category where with Bray, like we talked about earlier, where I think they're just waiting for this Brock Lesnar title reign to end, and then they can start pushing these guys again. My only problem with Cesaro though is I can't buy into his whole character. Similar to Ziggler, he doesn't have one. He's just, he's got that silly robe, which I can't stand. He walks to the ring with his chest puffed out. I don't understand why he's doing that or what the reasoning for that is. His music is god awful.
Yeah, it is.
Ever since
Yeah, definitely.
the Real Americans, he's just been floating around in obscurity. And, you know, after WrestleMania 30, I thought, wow, this guy's going to be pushed to the moon, and they're going to really give this guy, you know, a jetpack, and he's just going to fly to the moon. But he hasn't. And, you know, maybe you can do better with him on your brand.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go with somebody that personally I like, but of course the top chairman at WWE, Vince McMahon, does not like, and you know it kind of is affecting his character, and that is Mr. Bo Dallas. I think Bo Dallas is one of the funniest characters I've ever seen. He's genuinely funny. He's not. It's not forced. It's very genuine.
It's not Cena funny. It's his own funny, and it's his own style.
Absolutely, it's just, and if you haven't seen his work in NXT, he when he loses, he throws these humongous temper tantrums, and we've kind of seen it a little bit when he loses on the main roster, but I just feel like they haven't given him anything to do. I mean, they're finally starting to give him something with swagger, but I don't know how far that goes, and I think he's just somebody that can, if they can use him the right way and put him in a feud with somebody like, I don't know, Daniel Bryan or Cena or someone like that, I think he could really get elevated to a main event caliber superstar. But Vince, of course, we've heard the rumors that he doesn't like him. So.
Yeah, which is unfortunate because Bo Dallas has made such a promising start, and like you said, he's one of those genuinely funny people that you just want to see on your camera, on your TV sometimes. And I mean, especially when he'll go up to an opponent after a match and say, hey buddy, you'll be okay. You get back on your horse, that kind of thing, and that kind of thing is funny. I'm thinking of when he did that to Titus O'Neil. If you remember that, it was about a month or two ago on Raw. It was pretty funny. It was one of the funniest things I've seen all year. So Bo Dallas is a good pick, and I would have picked him in about maybe 2 or 3. So that's a good steal from me there. I'm actually going to go with somebody completely different and very similar to an earlier pick. He's one of my favourites, and I believe this guy is the most underutilized and underrated on the current roster full time, and that's Luke Harper. Actually, I think Luke Harper is one of the best WWE have. I really like this guy. Luke Harper, to me, has everything. I mean, he can speak. He's actually cut a few promos in WWE. He can speak. The dive outside the ring. I mean, the guy's 6'6", 6'7", 300 pounds. You don't expect that. His facial expressions, the way he sells in the ring. We've all seen, the selling, the storytelling he put on just with his face alone. He has the look of a monster. He's like Bray Wyatt. He looks like he can tear you apart. And the crowd. I think the crowd like him. His music is a little off, but that can be changed, obviously. I think Luke Harper has absolutely everything, and I don't know if you agree with this. I don't think there's really much. I think if you could. Right now, if you could take Luke Harper and push him in any direction, I think it would work. He's one of those people that can do quite a lot of everything. I don't think there are any weaknesses with the guy, or many weaknesses. I don't know if you agree.
I completely agree. I think he's somebody that I think eventually we'll see him shine when the Wyatt family is eventually broken up and Bray kind of goes off on his own. I think the first feud Bray has as a babyface is going to be against Luke Harper and Eric Rowan. I think eventually they'll break off from him, or they'll attack him, or something along those lines. And I think Bray that's going to be his first feud as a babyface. And I think that's rightfully so. You create a star with Bray Wyatt as a babyface, and you create Luke Harper as a heel. And I think Luke Harper, I've said it multiple times. I even wrote an article a long time ago when they first debuted on a different website that, Luke Harper is the true star of that group. I mean, Bray Wyatt has his detractors and stuff that doesn't make him as good as Luke Harper in the ring. Bray Wyatt's a tremendous promo, but in the ring, Luke Harper is
better. Yeah, I agree, and I'm surprised he's been picked 14th or whatever he's been picked. I'm surprised he's been that low. I thought you would take him. I thought you would take him instead of Paul Heyman, to be honest with you. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, I didn't see what you wrote, but Luke Harper is the best of the Wyatts. I don't know how popular or unpopular that may sound. Bray Wyatt is very good. Eric Rowan is good. He's a good man to have. He's good to have as a man, as a presence. He's not bad. He's okay. But Luke Harper to me is the best of the three, and Bray Wyatt Bray Wyatt, I would love to see a Wyatt Harper feud. I don't know if you would, but I would want to see that personally.
Absolutely.
So,
All right,
yeah, Luke Harper's a steal.
All right, let's move on here. My next pick is going to be somebody that will simply just draw. It's just as simple as that. He's only gonna be around here and there, but I just want somebody that can draw for me, and that's The Undertaker. Now we know The Undertaker did lose at WrestleMania 30, and we don't know if he'll be back. But under my regime, I will force him to come back. I will dye his hair personally, and I will force him back in the ring. Because, I think Taker has a couple matches left in him, and I think he could be a good draw for SmackDown.
Yeah, Undertaker is in my opinion, I'm a columnist at PW Mania, and I wrote a piece a while ago, I don't know if you saw it, on why The Undertaker is the absolute best of all time. And it got very mixed reactions as it would. I mean, you can have your views. Ric Flair came up and The Rock came up. I think Undertaker has that consistency over 25 years, which sets him apart from everybody else. And I'm actually going to stay along the same vein as you with this one, because I'm actually going to bring back from my roster The Rock, because in terms of star power, there's nobody bigger than The Rock. He's the biggest star ever in wrestling now. I think that's undisputed. Hulk Hogan was huge, but The Rock, I think, now has overtaken him with what he's done outside of the ring, in terms of his star power, in terms of what he brings and what he attracts. So The Rock is my next pick. Completely different to Luke Harper, obviously, but like you said, he's a proven draw, and just business-wise, it's good to have The Rock around because he can boost you at any given time, can't he?
Absolutely. My next pick is going to be somebody that kind of has been underutilized, and when you talked about underutilized with Luke Harper, I think maybe second fiddle to him, or maybe even surpassing him as far as being maybe mismanaged or misused, is Kane. You wrote, of course, a big article on why Kane's one of the all-time greats. I think Kane being used as this corporate figurehead
sucks.
Is just awful. I don't understand why he was chosen. I don't understand, what benefits he has, and it's so confusing because they like to go back and forth. They'll have him one week with the hair and the mask and all that stuff, and he'll come back as Corporate Kane. But and there's really no difference now. It's the same guy, and his mystique, his character has just completely been lost. And I think he's somebody that I remember tweeting during Raw when he took his mask off recently, and I tweeted, "Remember when Kane's mask coming off was a big deal? I remember that main evented a Raw." Against RVD.
They got one of the highest rated Raw. It got one of the highest ratings for Raw of all time.
Absolutely, and that just shows how Kane main evented a Raw, like you said, on one of the highest rated Raws of all time, and then you go back to recently where he took it off during a backstage segment right in the middle of the show. It really just shows how far that character's fallen. But hopefully on my brand, I can kind of revive his character and his career.
Okay. For my next guy, I'm actually going to pick someone for commentary next, if that's all right. I'm going to go with William Regal because Michael Cole, JBL, and Jerry Lawler suck. They suck. Honestly, they're awful. I wrote something on Pro Wrestling Powerhouse about a month ago, detailing why I thought WWE's Raw's current commentary team, I should specify there, Raw's current commentary team are the worst they've had in a long time, and that is apparent. That becomes apparent every single week, every single episode. The whole 999 is kind of catchy, and then sometimes it's annoying. The constant bickering and the arguing, I don't think they mesh well at all. So William Regal, I think commentary is important because commentary can decide whether or not somebody's turned off by what they're listening to. So William Regal, I want him on my commentary booth. I don't want Michael Cole, I don't want JBL, and I definitely don't want Jerry the King Lawler. So yeah,
I completely understand that. I think and JR makes a good point. I remember listening to a podcast of his, the Ross Report on podcast1.com, where he kind of talked about how he couldn't be doing what Michael Cole's doing, and he kind of praised Cole as far as being able to, and he even said it's a different generation now. It's a different time in broadcast, wrestling broadcasting, where you've got to plug the network, you've got to plug Twitter, you've got to use the hashtag, you've got to promote the app, you know, and he said he wouldn't be able to do that. And I think Michael Cole, and I understand he kind of catches shit all the time, but I don't think he's the worst of them. I think we can both agree Lawler's the worst.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I think Cole's the best of the three. I think Cole does go over the top sometimes, but he has some good calls here and there. I remember at WrestleMania during the main event, he called that final sequence of moves as good as anyone could. I mean, you know, the only person that could probably do it better is Jim Ross. So, you know, I think, you know, picking William Regal is a perfect move because I love his work in NXT as far as commentary goes. My next pick here is we're gonna go back down the young road here and try and get some youth back into my show, and we're gonna go with Rusev. I think Rusev has really been picking up some steam. I think he's finally his character's finally picking up some steam. I think he has a career as a heel for maybe 5 years, and I think and I've made the comparison so many times. I think he's the next Umaga. I think, you know, he'll be built up for a couple of years.
Hopefully not. Hopefully not, health-wise.
Hopefully not. Yeah. But I think he'll have a similar path where he'll be built up for a couple of years, and a babyface will come along and tear him down. And I think, you know, but that gimmick only has so far. You can only go so far with that gimmick unless he eventually turns on Lana and, you know, his country and then does something else. I don't see how far his character can go, but I think he'll do good on SmackDown.
Yeah, sure. Rusev, to me, I don't think he has 5 years. I would say 3. I think Rusev has done pleasantly well so far. Rusev has surprised me. I didn't think he would be as good as he has been. Lana's helped him, obviously, and Coulter has helped him. He's got the whole Patriot storyline going, which, as in America, historically in wrestling, has worked so well. So I understand that pick, definitely, and obviously Rusev is young as well, which is a benefit. So health-wise, and also, obviously, he's new, so fans won't get bored of him quickly. My next pick is somebody fairly young. He's been around for a few years, and I think he's an awful babyface, but I actually think he's quite a good heel. And I don't really like the guy, but I think he's a logical pick around about in the middle of the draft, and that's Sheamus. So I'm going to go with Sheamus next. I would turn him heel straight away. I think he's a god awful babyface. I think he's horrible. His pandering to the crowd is annoying. His anti-bullying promos are annoying. His hair, I know that's a bit irrelevant, but yeah, Sheamus to me looks like a heel because it's a bit of a cliche, but the heel foreigner has worked well for so many years. So Sheamus to me would be a good next pick just because he's capable of putting on good matches, especially with larger opponents. So he can put a good match on with people like Bray Wyatt and Cesaro. Definitely, he's proven that he can put on good matches. And so I think if you combine all of those elements, Sheamus is a good pick, personally.
I completely agree. And I actually have an article going right now in the draft sequence where I'm going to write a whole thing on how Sheamus is either being underused or misutilized. And, you know, I think one thing I think people don't give him enough credit for is having just natural instincts in the ring. He rarely makes mistakes. He rarely, you know, does anything that you go, oh, that didn't look good, or you cringe when he's wrestling. I think he's always putting on good matches. Now, like you said, his character as a babyface is just god-awful, and it's almost a elevated version of John Cena when he tries to pander to the crowd. But I think Sheamus as a heel was awesome. I loved his program with John Cena and Triple H in 2010 and 11. So, you know, that's a good pickup for you there. Yeah. I'm going to go with somebody that I think has potential to the highest. I wrote a whole article on him, I think, last week or the week before. Ryback. I think Ryback, if you remember, 2012, had a meteoric rise to the main event scene. He was plugged into a feud with Punk. He was, you know, contending for the WWE Championship, and then all of a sudden his character just fell off after that Hell in a Cell match. And
you remember that also his popularity at that time was really starting to peak, and the crowds were getting behind him. And at the time we knew he wasn't great, but we knew he had promise, and it was something new we wanted to see, which is why we were behind it. It was a new thing. It was a new catchphrase. It was something that felt fresh at the time. And the worst thing to me that happened to Ryback was the heel turn. For a ridiculous reason, the writers completely destroyed Ryback. It wasn't Ryback's fault that he is where he is now. It's the writers' fault. Will remain. I don't think Ryback necessarily deserves to be here. I would have actually, if it was me booking, I would have had him actually as in a shock victory. I would have had him beat Cena at Extreme Rules for the title straight after winning off the Rock. I think it just would have been a big surprise, and it would have just put him in that spotlight, just giving him that boost that he may have needed. And
I think something that actually would have been a little better is if he beat Punk at Hell in a Cell. I think if he would have beaten Punk right away, had maybe a 2-month title reign, you could easily put it back on Punk and then have Rock win it at Rumble. I think, and I think somebody spoke on Punk's reign. I forget where I read it, or it might have been you, or I forget who it was, but they were talking about Punk's, reign being just, I think it was Paul Sweat. He, or Sweet, or whatever his last name is, he wrote an article earlier this week on, how title reigns and the world title has kind of been diminished. And he brought up CM Punk and his reign. His reign wasn't that great, and I don't see what the big deal of, was for having him walk into Rumble with the title. I don't think it would have taken away from Rock's win. I think if Ryback would have won it at the Hell in a Cell, I think, that would have been just a big time moment for him.
Yeah.
So, I think they screwed up with him big time.
And a surprise in wrestling is always good, especially nowadays with social media and spoilers. So, yeah, completely agree. My next pick is actually going to be Damien Sandow, because I feel like I can do a lot with him. He's one of my favourites. Original Damien Sandow, not now, obviously. He's one of those. I noticed there was an article put up about. Benjamin wrote it about a week ago. It was about Brock Lesnar ruining Money in the Bank. I don't know if you saw this. Jay commented on it, and he said that Seth Rollins is, he said, and I quote, a million times better than Damien Sandow. I thought that was a bit harsh. I think Seth Rollins is better than Damien Sandow, but Damien Sandow, when he first came into WWE, his mic skills were perfect, and he was actually funny and entertaining. He was like a Bo Dallas, but with more prowess. And his matches were pretty good. He works good. He's not a bad worker. He's not the best worker, but he's a good worker. I think he's solid all round. And I think this whole we're gonna stick a new gimmick on him every 3 weeks, or make him Miz's bodyguard or stunt double is just awful. I think Sandow, I don't know if you're a big fan of him, but I think we can both agree that he's better than what he's been given over the past year. I don't know if you agree with that, but I mean, he was, this guy won Money in the Bank. I mean, he won Money in the Bank, and he's here now. That to me is crazy. So yeah, I don't agree with it at all. And I think if I had Damien Sandow here, which is what I'm doing, I think I'd do a lot with him.
Absolutely. I loved his original gimmick when he first came onto the main roster. I think something that went wrong with him is just it was the same thing over and over again. And that may sound like a slight or a backhanded compliment, but or an insult, but it was just nothing changed with him. It was the same thing every week. It was, and he wasn't that impressive in the ring, which kind of, took away from his overall character. But I like Damien Sandow. I didn't think he should have won Money in the Bank in the first place. I think you kind of...
Cody Rhodes?
No, I mean, I think the thing that scares me is Seth Rollins is kind of in the same boat where he's somebody that they want to push clearly, and I think Sandow was in the same boat where, they wanted to push Sandow, but they couldn't because Cena was the champion, and they had a big plan for Cena, and they wanted to do stuff with Cena, of course, and
they unified the titles.
And Sandow was just in the way, wrong place, wrong time. I think Sandow would have won the world title if they kept the title separate. Now, of course, they decided not to do that, and Sandow has been in a tailspin ever since. So,
I think he should have beaten Alberto Del Rio for the title, because who are fans going to cheer for, Del Rio or Sandow? I mean, yeah, it would have been perfect. I don't think Cena needed the title. I think what WWE should have done was have a TLC when they combined them, was have John Cena in his own feud in his own match, and I think it should have been not main eventing, but something like Randy Orton, Sandow, Del Rio, where you have three people that can work something slightly different. Have Randy Orton win, obviously, because he's the biggest star of the three, and then you still have Cena available. You still have Randy Orton as your champion. You can still develop new number one contenders and stuff like that. So, it may not have even been discussed, but I think Sandow was slightly robbed, and you're exactly right when you say wrong place, wrong time. I don't think that saying is more accurate than with this situation.
Absolutely, like you said, you pretty much covered everything there. I think it's my pick now, right? Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna go with somebody that, of course, is kind of similar in the same boat as Kane. A legend in WWE, but kind of has been kind of floating around and not really doing much. I'm gonna go with the Big Show. I think and after your article about Kane, I was going to write one about the Big Show because I think he is so underrated as far as an overall talent goes. I think he's one of the most versatile, wrestlers of all time. Where he's able to play a heel, he's able to play a kid-friendly giant. He's able to be a sellout. He's able to do this. He's able to do a lot of different things as far as characters go. And I'm willing to say that the Big Show is the greatest giant of all time. Now, I know some people will all of a sudden just go, whoa, what are you talking about? Andre the Giant, what are you talking As much as I love Andre the Giant, I've watched several of his matches, and I respect him, and WWE holds him in high regard. But Andre the Giant could never move around like the Big Show can at his age.
Mm-hmm.
Big Show's around 40-something years old, and he can still move around that ring. I remember one of his biggest spots in the ring is that move where he will elbow somebody and then hit the ropes and then come back around.
Mm-hmm.
The way he hits the ropes, and he can move like anybody else. So
Mm-hmm.
I think the Big Show is somebody that's highly underrated, highly underused, and I think he's a great asset to have on any roster.
Yeah, he is. You're right. He is. I think he is the best big man of all time in wrestling. Best giant in wrestling's history. People will look at you and say, "Well, hold on, what about the Undertaker?" No, the Undertaker's different. The Undertaker's different. He's 4 or 5 inches shorter. He's a character. He's obviously in a different category. He's a different class. In terms of giants, in terms of big men, your Yokozunas or your Andres, your Kevin Nash or Big John Studd. These types. Big Show is the best of all time, and also the difference with him and Andre. Andre was an attraction who couldn't physically wrestle well or consistently. Big Show could actually do both of them, and actually people forget that throughout the years, the Big Show has actually put on quite a lot of good matches. I mean, I don't think he gets the credit he deserves there. I think he's put on a lot of good matches over the years, which brings me to somebody else who's put on a lot of good matches over the years. From my next pick, somebody who's been in WWE for the same amount of time, and that would be Chris Jericho. Again, he's reliable. He's one of the most reliable of all time. Good matches, good athlete, can still go. Promo-wise, he's good. He can talk. He can sell a feud, and he's one of those who's more than able and willing to help make a younger wrestler into a star and help elevate them. So Chris Jericho is all-round perfect, and I think, Chris Jericho would come next here.
The only thing with Jericho, and I wrote a piece a couple weeks ago about, he's really lost his luster, and I think a part of that is, kind of becoming a part-timer. I think part of that is just his willingness to come in and out. My biggest thing with the whole Bray Wyatt and Jericho thing is I think the blame has to fall on Jericho. I think, and I will say WWE kind of threw this feud out of nowhere. There was no rhyme or reason for it. There was no, it just happened out of nowhere. But Jericho's job in this situation is to make Bray Wyatt a bigger star, and
he didn't.
That didn't happen. So I don't know what's next for Jericho. I don't know if he retires soon. But he says he feels great. He says he wants to wrestle some more. The only problem I have is he needs to be put in a feud where he can either elevate a new star or revive an old one. I said that I would love to see a Jericho and Randy Orton feud. Like we saw last week, he kind of was in that mix with the Authority.
Mm.
I don't know why you can't put together an Orton and Jericho feud just for shits and giggles, just to have something for both guys to do. Because Orton's kind of floating around nowhere right now, and Jericho's in the same boat.
Do you mean like when we saw Shawn Michaels versus Chris Jericho feud about 6 years ago? The roles reversed, so Jericho is the older guy and Orton is in the place of Jericho 6 years ago, something like that.
And that's another point that I want to bring up is everything now has to be, well, we've got to elevate this guy. We've got to plug this guy with him so he gets pushed and he goes up the ladder. And it's too much figuring for the new generation where we should just look for what will sell, what will be entertaining for fans to watch. I think a Jericho and Orton feud, just for a little bit, would be amazing. I think those two would be able to work together so well. I think Jericho would be able to be the babyface and crack jokes on Orton and you know, in his Jericho-esque way, and I think that'd just be perfect.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah, definitely. Just think. Yeah, it's a good idea because obviously also they're both veterans and they're both experienced, so they both know how to work. Even with each other, they've worked with each other quite a few times before. Yep. So there's definitely a chemistry there. And if you have them both together, then yeah, I mean, not a long-term thing. I don't think fans will want to see that long-term. I fear that a lot of fans would be bored of what you just said. I don't mind the idea because now you explain it to me, it's sort of like, okay, yeah, I see the positives behind it, even though I can't stand Randy Orton. I like Chris Jericho. I always have liked Chris Jericho. So from a storyline purpose, it would make sense in a way to have that and to showcase that short term.
All right. Well, unfortunately, I'm running low on time and I have to be somewhere soon. So let's just call it here, and maybe we'll do a part 2 later this week or later this weekend. So Oliver, tell people how they can find you and get in touch with you.
Yeah, sure. So I'm on Twitter practically 24/7. You can follow me at Oliver Norgrove. Obviously, go follow at team_PWP. That's for the entire Pro Wrestling Powerhouse community. Eron and myself run that with Joel and Jay and Bill. So it's usually just us 5 on that account. Obviously, go over to Facebook and like the Pro Wrestling Powerhouse Facebook page. And no, that's all I got to plug. So thanks for that. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, you can find me on Twitter at Eron_PWP. I have a bunch of articles coming up soon. I have the Night of Champions series. Next up is the top 5 tag team champions in WWE history. We're going to go through all the championships. We're going to go through the top 5 matches in Night of Champions history. We're going to go through a whole thing to get you ready for Night of Champions. From Oliver, me, PWP, thanks for joining us, and look out for part 2.